Last year only this happened, na? In some basement people are house holding. Yes, 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 yes. अरे भाई, this is crazy, man. तो इस साल भी वाटर लॉगिंग है? भर गया है? अच्छा, अच्छा। डायनामिक्स लिख देते हैं। नहीं, कंफ्यूजन नहीं होना चाहिए। बट सिलेबस खोला। स्टार्ट करें? लिख लो। आज पूरा डिक्टेट कर दूंगा। There is no typed thing that I have for this. This is Unit 8, right? Unit 8 DA. Firstly, write some background on development administration. Development administration or DA. Development administration or DA emerged as an instrument to develop an innovative process of change develop an innovative process of change in developing countries. In developing countries. The post-colonial development world, the post-colonial developing world, sorry, the post-colonial developing world realized that whatever was done in the name of development, that whatever was done in the name of development by the imperialists or colonialists, by the imperialists or the colonialists, the colonialist was not development in the real sense, was not development in the real sense. So basically, this development administration will is also a topic within comparative public administration. But development administration will continue to hold ground even after public administration, comparative public administration will be gone. Will be gone in the sense it will go down when it comes to its relevance. So, right, father, development in the real term or development in the real sense, the developing countries wanted to change the status quoist approach. There is something called the status quoist approach. What is the status quo approach? Write the full line. Change from status quo approach to developmental approach. Change the status quoist approach into a or to a developmental approach. Status quoist approach to a developmental approach. Okay. So what is the status quoist approach? Hmm? Stagnation. Very good. Basically, whatever is there in the present, we don't change a lot of things. We continue that in status quo. Okay. Status quo approach to developmental approach. The underlying purpose was to make development possible, in every sense of the term. And for this, innovation and creativity was required. Innovation and creativity was required. For this, or what do you say? To achieve this, a series of experimentation was carried out in order to adapt administration to the developmental needs. Basically, these experimentations are for what? Administration to adapt to developmental needs. So now we can see it means before this, administration was not adapted to developmental needs. During colonial times, was the focus of administration development? Not necessarily. It's to, for example, in India, it was to create railroads not for the development of Indian economy, but to take away minerals from India to the to Britain. Yes. So this some which remains unmoved. Yes, Moise. Status quoist approach is that. So that means from an administrative system, a colonial administrative system, we are moving towards an administrative system that focuses on development. Next, right? Development is the priority of every nation, though the nature of problem they are facing are very different. Nature of problem that they are facing are very different. That means it differs from one country to another country, are very different. However, the problems, the problems of developing countries are immense, uh, ranging from improving literacy, healthcare, nutrition, achieving social justice, basically promoting welfare, improving or stabilizing the state through welfare. Development is generally termed as development is generally termed as directed social change. Directed social change. Basically, social change can be directed or non-directed. Social change can happen in any way. When we direct social change towards something, that is a definition of development, and that is what development administration will be try to do. So this is directed social change. Its thrust is to bring about social and material development around the world. I mean, material development to the people, social and material development to the people. Bring about social and material development to the people. Okay. Uh, Introduction, now you get a sense of what development administration is talking about now. Development administration is trying to bring in certain social change. Yes, basically, development administration is the wing on which welfare state will function in the 21st century in these newly independent countries. Okay, ठीक है. आगे लिखो. आगे we'll see the evolution of evolution. हाँ. Evolution of development administration. The problem of administration in developing countries, the problem of administration in developing countries has always been has always been different from those in industrialized developed countries. This interrelation between this interrelation between administration this interrelation between administration and uh, social setting has been pointed out or was pointed out by Robert Dahl. Now, Robert Dahl wrote this or pointed out this in 1947. Okay? After that, two other things were written by Herbert Simon, by Herbert Simon and by Dwight Waldo. Basically, they'll have a lot of dissatisfaction with the uh, they'll have a lot of dissatisfaction with the uh, traditional approach of public administration. We have seen how Simon was very much frustrated with how the way traditional public administration was, how classical theorists were viewing things. So they'll have a lot of reservations about it. So furthermore, right? Furthermore, not furthermore, right? However, this idea of development administration will go to a very a set of prominent scholars. Will go to a prominent scholars such as George Gant, Fred Riggs, Edward Widener, Edward Widener, Milton Eastman, and So these people not only highlighted the concept. So why I am giving you these names is whenever you are writing an answer, incorporate some of their names in introduction or conclusion. That's it. Nothing. I mean, you don't have to remember every concept they have given, etc. See, then because straightforward questions will come in this, but you can use their names in different areas. Okay? Then right, these scholars not only highlighted the issues, not only highlighted the concept of development administration. They highlighted the concept of development administration, but also brought to the fore the issues pertaining to its relevance and feasibility. That how do we actually can change from a colonial administrative system to a developmental administrative system that serves the welfare purpose. Okay? क्या क्या उससे पहले क्या लिखा है? Issues to how to bring in issues pertaining to the relevance and feasibility. Issues pertaining to the relevance or its relevance or feasibility. However, most important contribution to this was done by the comparative administrative group that was formed. This was formed under comparative administration we studied, public administration we studied. comparative administrative group that was formed, the most widespread. Then, right, as we have discussed in CPA, there was widespread uh, independence movement, or there were uh, multiple newly independent countries were coming out of colonial rule after World War II. Coming out of uh, colonial rule out of World War II. In these countries, often termed as the third world or the developing world, third world or the developing world, in these countries, the major, so basically both internal, right, both internal and external forces contributed to the failure of development approach. Contributed to the failure of development approach. The major internal factors among these are internal factors that led to problems of development or underdevelopment are widespread poverty, illiteracy, inefficient and corrupt bureaucracy, then lack of adequate infrastructure, to utilize natural resources. The external factors were mostly regarding the terms of international trade. Terms of international trade, in terms of international trade, it shifted the economic relation. From being colonial to something called neo-colonial. Something called neo-colonial. What does this neo-colonialism means? Yes, Moise, neo-colonial. That means this colonial relation was mostly there is a colonial master and a colonial subject. Now is what? The multinational companies of the previous colonial master now have a lot of influence in these newly independent countries. So terms of trade was an external factor of underdevelopment, that suddenly these countries started behaving like they have a lot of say in these newly independent countries. They used to influence the political or administrative setup in these countries. They used to influence elections in these countries. They used to back candidates in these countries. We see during this time there is something in Latin America that emerged, something called banana republics. Basically, some American companies were into banana plantations in certain Latin American countries. All right, small Latin American countries. Uh, Nicaragua, etc., etc. All those Panama, all those countries, small countries, they were known as banana republics. That these companies, these fruit companies, these are multinational giants who used to have so much influence in the domestic politics of these republics that whenever these countries wanted, they uh, used to change the political system. They used to back some different candidate, that person used to win. So that showed that the economic might of American companies of that time when they used to influence these. Similarly, now continue. Banana republics. You understand now this neoliberalism, how new colonialism and neoliberalism is shaping the new world, and how people are realizing in these newly independent or developing countries that this idea of development is not for us. When it comes to free trade, it is technically favoring the Western powers. Yes? Now, right. Development administration grew as an academic discipline. Development administration, or simply write DA from now on, grew as an academic discipline when Western industrialized nations began to provide aid for development of developing countries. For development of developing countries. When Western industrialized countries, so we have studied how America and Western Europe, they provided certain structural adjustment programs, certain improvement programs in these countries. That how during CPA they used to compete with the communist USSR to influence social change in these newly independent countries. Okay. Now, right further, uh, earlier development was primarily viewed as economic development, and development administration was largely economic administration. However, lately, however, lately, development administration is less bound by Western approaches of development. So you can see Western society is much more focused on individualism. Yes, is much more focused on individualism, much more focused on materialism as compared to Eastern societies. Societies of China, Japan, uh, Southeast Asia, India, they are not so materialistic in nature. Yes, but material products and individualism is very much influential in the Western idea of development. Yes. Now, so scholars of here that did not agree with this only economic approach of administration. So for them, things such as social justice was important. Lately after, what was lately after? What did I dictate? So lately, write down. Lately, development administration is less bound by these Western approaches. By these Western approaches of development, its focus now. Basically, we are studying the evolution part of it, the broad evolution. Then we'll go into development administration, what exactly it is. Broad evolution, let's understand first. क्या हो गया? Its focus now on focus now is to develop an indigenous model of development or indigenous development which is sustainable in nature. Indigenous development which is sustainable in nature. ठीक है. Development DA write a quote, the quote unquote, develop DA has been observed. This is a definition kind of a thing. It has been observed focuses on planned change to meet a nation's broad political, economic, social, and cultural objectives. Political, economic, social, and cultural objectives. This is a definition given by Wesley and Kaiden. Basically, if it asks you that what is development administration, so if you have to introduce with a definition, you can write these scholars' name, Wesley and Kaiden. One of the contemporary trends in development administration, one of the contemporary trends in development administration is a shift from blueprint approach, is a shift from blueprint approach, quote unquote, blueprint approach to a learning approach, or something called a learning process approach. Learning process approach. What does this mean? These newly developing countries are coming up with, are moving away from this approach and bringing in indigenous models of development through this approach. What does this mean? What was this blueprint approach and what was this learning process approach? Guys, write online. Whatever I taught in CPA, just apply your mind. What is this blueprint approach? Yes, but what was this blueprint approach first? Right, the blueprint approach focused on designing a specific plan of action in advance for administering a development program, for administering specific plan in advance, plan in advance for administering a development program. In contrast, learning process approach is a relatively open-ended strategy, to plan social change. This learning process approach emphasizes planning with the people with focus on flexibility and periodic adaptability. Now read again whatever definition we wrote about blueprint approach. Yes. So specific plan in advance. There is specific plan in advance that this is how development will happen. Whose theory is applicable here? Pavan, Moiz, Nishtha, Ojasvi. Whose theory, which theorist's idea is applicable in this definition of blueprint approach? Not Guli Ganarvik. Which theorist? Herbert Simon. How come, Anish? What is the explanation of Herbert Simon? I mean, how come is he saying this? हाँ, वही तो है ब्लूप्रिंट अप्रोच। कह रहा है कि भाई डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज कह रहे हैं कि भाई ये ले लो, दिस इज द मॉडल ऑफ डेवलपमेंट, यू ऑल डेवलप अकॉर्डिंग टू दिस। यही तो सवाल है, यही तो यहाँ के सवाल पूछ रहे हैं कि यार समथिंग that was applicable in developing your country, how will it be applicable in developing my country? Because my problems are different altogether. My social and communitarian values are different. So this is the difference between blueprint. So blueprint approach is mostly one best way. Learning process is what? Learning process is that we learn what exactly our society needs, we work towards it, we succeed in some, fail in some. Out of those failure, we again learn and we keep on developing. We involve people in decision making. That was more of what? A behavioral approach, a human relation approach. This was more classical approach, classical theorist approach. That one, this is the model of development, one best way, you follow this or else there is no other way to develop. Okay, now write further. Yeah. Right, evolution of da evolution of da has passed through the following phases. So basically, if the question directly comes, evolution of development administration, you have in mind certain pointers or certain arrows according to which things are moving. Okay, first, writings of uh, George Gant, Riggs, Widener, etc. Writings of Gant, Riggs, Widener, etc. Next step, what happened was formation of comparative administrative group. So they focused on different comparative systems, administrative systems, and they wanted to create a science of administration out of it. So CAG group was the next step. Third, there was optimism about concept of development in these countries, and there was an emphasis on people-centric approach. And there was an emphasis on people-centric approach or people-centric development. Next phase came in evolution. There was a focus on pluralism, that development can be different in different countries. The models of development can be different. What is this? This is a learning process approach. Okay, so plural focus on pluralism was there. हाँ, फोर्थ फिफ्थ जैसे भी लिखो, बट उस प्रोनोलॉजी में चल रहा है, ऐसा नहीं कि एक खत्म होकर दूसरा शुरू हो रहा है। एवरीथिंग, आई मीन दिस इज अ ब्रॉड जनरलाइजेशन। हाँ, नेक्स्ट इज वेस्टर्न एड फॉर डेवलपमेंट programs. In this time, Western aid for development programs is happening 1960s, 70s, 80s. This is the phase. Then comes shift from actually blueprint to learning process. Change. Next is change from production centered. Change from production centered to people centric approach or people centered approach. So, and the last pointer would be moving away or moving towards context based theories. Moving towards context based theories. Whenever you will read CPA and DA, you will read it together. Okay? Questions come together in this, your answer should be holistic in these two topics. Next, right? The need. So, with continuation, sir, last one point. Okay. Last one point is what was last one point? Shift from or moving towards context based theories. Context based theories. Yeah, I have all of these handwritten notes of me. It's very tough to type it out actually. People also are busy here, so better you also write the same thing that I have written. Huh. Uh, okay, second last point. Okay, before that is what? Change from production centric to people centric. Change from production centric to people centric. Okay. Now, then the explanation. The needs of people the needs of people in this people centric approach, the needs of people in this people centric approach take precedence over the needs of production system. The key focus now is human growth and well-being. Is human growth and well-being. So human growth and well-being, basically anything that is sustainable development, you write in the bracket, anything that is sustainable development, basically focus on social justice, equality, etc., etc. Okay. In the present context, in the present context, DA, development administration, is characterized by context based theories which incorporate indigenous social, cultural, political and economic realities of third world countries. And economic realities of third world countries. Okay. Now, what is the meaning of development administration? Write the next para. What is the meaning of development administration? So till now, there is no one definition of development administration. Okay? There is no one consensus that okay, this is development administration. So we write the ideas of different scholars about what is development administration. First, write some pointers. First, let's be clear what exactly is development administration talking about. Then we'll write those scholarly definitions. Because this is mostly, there is nothing conceptual. You will see there's not much conceptual. It's mostly you memorize these scholars, you write or use them here and there. That's good. Right. What all is DA? What does development administration mean? Right. In pointers, planned change in economy or infrastructure, influence of social structure and social institutions on individual personality, influence of social structures and social institutions on individual personality, creation of improved condition of material life, creation of improved condition of material life, modification modification of human behavior for social change, focus focus on something called national development, equitable distribution of healthcare, education, employment, basically to achieve social justice. Employment, etc. So basically to achieve social justice. Okay. Then protection of human rights, protection of human rights, uh, or protection of democratic values, human rights and democratic values, fulfillment of goal of sustainability, fulfillment of goal of sustainability for future generations, for future generations. Then they write certain scholarly opinions. According to Turner and Huell, DA today, development administration today, is defined as an economic component dealing with as an economic component dealing with the creation the with the creation of wealth and improved condition creation of wealth and improved condition of material life. And this material life, cut this comma, material life comma, equitably distributed social ingredients that is measured in terms of social ingredients that is measured in terms of well-being, in terms of well-being in health, education, housing, and employment. They also say that it has a uh, it also has a political dimension. DA has a political dimension, including political dimension, including values such as human rights, political freedom, and democratic values. Tired? Uh, Continue. Their definition is a bit long, but it's important to write. Um, Democratic values लिख लिया ना? एक कल्चरल डिमेंशन, बेसिकली इकोनॉमिक डिमेंशन हो गया, पॉलिटिकल डिमेंशन हो गया, नाउ कल्चरल डिमेंशन. A cultural dimension is also there in recognition of the fact. Cultural dimension is also there in recognition of the fact that cultures confer identity and self-worth, identity and self-worth to people, comma, a commitment to ecologically sound and sustainable development. An ecologically sound and sustainable development. So that the present generation basically does not jeopardize, so the present generation does not jeopardize the position of the present generation, does not jeopardize the position of future generations. Okay. Now next scholar is a very scholar heavy definitions. Montgomery, no, right? Widener's definition, right? Right, Widener's definition. Edward Widener. Widener was critical. Widener was critical of traditional public administration (TPA), which focused on economy, which focused on economy and efficiency as both goals, as both goals and the means, arguing that this is not relevant, arguing that this is not relevant for the newly independent countries. For him, basically for Widener, development is not a static end, is not a static end, but a dynamic process. Starting end, but a dynamic process. Okay? So he's saying, or he'll say, right, therefore, Widener will say, therefore, DA, therefore, DA is a planned, action oriented, and change oriented, planned, action oriented, and change oriented manner of administration, administration to uh, administration to achieve defined goals, to achieve defined goals of planned social, political, and economic change. Defined goals of planned social, political, and economic change. Then write Frederick's definition. Frederick's definition. So he has given two definitions, okay? Dual definition. He first defined DA as the name often given to the process by which a country's government acts to fulfill its role in achieving development. Acts to fulfill its role in achieving development, and as the organized effort to carry out programs or projects to pursue developmental objectives. To pursue developmental objectives. Programs to pursue developmental objectives. He famously elaborated or famously construed that this particular definition involved two interrelated aspects. Namely, first, development of administration. First, right? Administration of development. Administration of development. And second point, right? Development of administration. What is Ricks talking about? Ricks said, so read out his definition first. Yes, fulfill its role in achieving development. So, a country's government wants to achieve development. Second, the country's government is implementing certain programs to achieve development. Within this, there are two aspects: administration of development, development of administration. Okay. Now, what does this mean? Administration of development. Okay. For example, there is a developmental program that is going on. What developmental program is going on recently in India? What famous? For example, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan is going on. Okay? In Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, or let's take something more technical. Let's say the aspirational district program is going on. You all know what aspirational district program is? Aspirational district program is going on. In this, we are focusing on certain underdeveloped districts and we want to develop them. That means we will go and implement some projects there. Yes. So there are developmental projects such as improving the primary health centers in India. Yes, primary health centers in India, or primary health centers in these districts. Then improving, for example, sanitation facilities, improving primary schools, improving the Anganwadis inside it. Similarly, improving the agricultural output of that area, diversification of output of agriculture, diet, etc. So that also promoting animal husbandry, etc., etc. That means we are taking a lot of developmental programs and we are implementing there. That means what? We are administering development. We are bringing development programs and we are administering them. That means administration of development. When we are implementing, that means we are administering those things. For example, if you go to a doctor or for a blood or a vitamin shot, they will administer a injection to you. That means they'll put that thing here. That is administration. Okay, administration. So doctor administers a drug to you. That means they give you that. Similarly, administration of development means bringing development through programs and implementing them. Yes, administration of development. But what is this development of administration? Because these two concepts are where questions are asked in DA. What is this development of administration? Online people, what is this development of administration? Developing how? Yes, developing how to implement a policy. Somewhat correct. Modernizing administrative systems. Yes, somewhat correct. Somewhat, yeah, majorly correct. Good, Anushka. Hmm? Reforms. Okay, reforms. See, development of administration means development of administrative capacity to deliver change. We have developmental programs for improving the method of implementing a policy. Okay, see, we have developmental programs, perfect policies, very good policies. But if the administrative capacity is not there to implement or is not competent enough to deliver development, this means what? It means you cannot implement your own policies. So to improve or to do capacity building in administration, okay? Capacity building. Capacity building how? Doing all of these activities, modernizing, reforming, focusing on the how to do something. Okay, that is why two concepts are important that Rix is saying. One is administration of development and development of administration. So through administrative reforms, you improve the administrative apparatus that carries out development. Understood? So development of administration and administration of development. So development administration has two things. These two things are what Rix is saying. Okay. Now for the right. The administration of development, for example, implementation of programs and projects to achieve developmental goals. Development of administration means the process of strengthening the administrative capacity of the government itself. Strengthening the administrative capacity of the government itself. Next scholar, Montgomery. Montgomery. Montgomery took a narrower view and defined DA as carrying out planned change in the economy, and capital infrastructure. In the economy and capital infrastructure. And to a lesser extent in social services like health and education. And to a lesser extent in services like health and education. Next is Donald Stone. He defined DA broadly, concerned with achieving national development, through plans, policies, programs, and projects which focus on nation building and socio-economic development. Nation building and socio-economic development. Next guy is George Gant. He described DA as the complex of agencies, management systems, and processes that a government establishes to achieve its developmental goals. Furthermore, he highlighted DA's innovative dimension and flexibility to design new methods to increase effectiveness and quality. Design new method to increase effectiveness and quality. How? How is there improving flexibility and innovation? Learning process. Yes, these are the keywords that you need to write. Okay. Okay, so definition is done, definition is done, evolution is done. ठीक है, और क्या क्या बचा है? See, simply moving on to the next one. There is DA. There has to be something called non-developmental administration. What can those be? What can be non-developmental administration? Moiz, Pawan, Anishka, Ojaswi. What can be non-developmental administration? You know now broadly what exactly is this administration. What is non-development administration? Whenever in question you are writing, always write, wherever applicable, write a counter perspective. That we know what DA is, but we also know what DA is not. Non-developmental administration, what is it? Basically, things such as law and order administration. Law and order, taking care of law and order, is not exactly delivering welfare programs. It is the basic, policing is the basic function of the state. Okay? Similarly, colonial administration, that is non-developmental in nature, that does not care about people. Traditional rules, how so, Moise? What do you mean by traditional rules? Agraria wala administration, na? Ha, yes. If you meant that, of course. The agraria models of administration. See. Non-DA is specifically something that is more regulatory, law and order focused. Whenever writing under this, write these things. Don't write colonial, etc. That is for your understanding. Mostly, it is this. So, regulatory administration and law and order administration, such as the Competition Commission of India. The Competition Commission of India is not going ahead and implementing some welfare programs. It is just letting the institutions compete. Okay. Law and order, the police in India. Yes. The what do you say? The paramilitary in India. They are very much inside or very much into the non-developmental aspects. They do not go ahead and carry out these developmental programs. But tell me, are these two completely separate, non-DA and DA? They are interlinked, yes. So these people need to do their job very well for this to be implemented. So write down this, that to understand development administration fully, or write down this under a counter perspective, right, that DA is best clarified. DA is best clarified when contrasted with non-developmental or traditional administration. Or traditional administration, which is primarily concerned with regulatory and law and order functions. While conceptually distinct, the two are interlinked in nature. The two are interlinked in nature. Go back to that definition, or definition is what all the pointers under development administration. Pointers is such as it focused on change orientation. What exactly does it constitute? At pointers I dictated you, know. Uh, okay, right. Further. Should I go slow? Okay. Development administration ऐसा ही है पूरा notes है. Scholar perspective, ये perspective, वो perspective. हाँ, right. Core characteristics. Core characteristics. The characteristics features of DA can be identified. The characteristics features of DA can be identified by its distinct loyalties, by its distinct loyalties, purposes, by its distinct loyalties, purposes, and attitudes. So write the first feature, first point. Change orientation. It rejects the status quo. In evolution, we studied this. Fleetingly, we studied what is this. It rejects the status quo and is fundamentally oriented towards bringing about social and economic transformation. Bringing about social and economic transformation. Second, social and economic transformation. Second is first is change orientation, then is goal orientation. It is result focused, aiming to achieve specific predetermined aiming to achieve specific predetermined developmental objectives. Developmental objectives. ठीक है? Next would be client orientation. Don't write client orientation, write people orientation. Basically, it is focused on meeting needs of the citizen. Basic. Focused on meeting the needs of the citizen. Okay? Then comes time orientation. So achieving development within a specific time frame. Time orientation. Now, all of you know something about demographic under this time orientation. Demographic dividend. Example, right? Dividend. Example, right? Demographic dividend. Now, does India have demographic dividend? What is demographic dividend? Hmm. Moise, Pawan, write down what is demographic dividend. Oh, you guys must be knowing all of this. See, demographic dividend is you must have read in newspapers that India is a uh, population is very youthful in nature. That means our working age is very low. Not working age, the average age of India is very low. So, if young people or working age people working age people outnumber people who are not working. So working age people, for example, in India, from 2025 to 2045, the working age people will outnumber the people who are the dependent population. Working population, the dependent population. So dependent population are what? Children and senior citizens. Okay, basically, uh, 15 to 59 is the, for example, the working age. Okay. Child below 15 and people above 60 are dependent population. Which population earns in the country? Working age population. So if more people are earning and less people are dependent on them, that means country's growth will be higher. Yes, logically. Now, demographic dividend does not last long. It is usually a time period of those 25-30 years in which a country which is a middle income country has to go into the high income country, else there is no way. Else these people, if they are less in number, everything will be burdened on them. So in a country that focuses more on something called uh, in a country where healthcare cost is much more higher, healthcare and education costs are much more higher for the dependent population, it leads to uh, higher cost or higher spending on healthcare. If the working population is high, the income is high, and the cost is very low when it comes to taking care of dependent population. So national income increases significantly when demographic dividend phase is going on. National income increases exponentially. For India to achieve or to make the best of the demographic dividend, India should be growing at more than 12% per annum, but at present we are growing at around 6.5 to 7% per annum. This is an example of demographic dividend. So demographic dividend is making sure or uh, taking the full what do you say, advantage of more working age population. Working age population. You all understood? Pavan, Moise, etc. Hmm. Okay. So this is an example of how time orientation is important in these developing countries. Why we need time orientation, timely development. Okay. Next, next comes fifth point after time orientation, right? Participation orientation. Participation orientation. It encourages and facilitates the development, facilitates the involvement of citizens in the developmental process. Very simple. Encourages participation of citizens. Sixth is environment orientation. It is ecological. So DA is ecological and contextual, ecological and contextual in nature, aiming for sustainable administration. Aiming for sustainable administration. Then comes something called innovation orientation. That means flexible, creative, seeking new method and processes to solve a problem. What kind of problem? Contextual problems. Contextual problems mean it differs from country to country. So you must have seen something called the gross happiness index. Gross happiness index. Gross happiness index is followed where? It is followed in Bhutan. Now, this particular index shows that development is very contextual in nature. Not everything is very materialistic. So you can write an example of how innovation orientation, or under even environmental orientation, you can write the ecology, because the society wants not material development, but that it wants people to be happy in the traditional way of life. Yes. Next, right, the difference between traditional public administration and development administration. So TPA is more regulatory and routine in nature and very predictable in nature. First point is regulatory, routine, and predictable. DA, on the other hand, deals with new, unpredictable problems, or also something called wicked problems. New, unpredictable tasks deals with new, unpredictable problems or wicked problems. So, task structure is regulatory and routine here. Task structure is new, unpredictable tasks, innovative tasks, unpredictable, new, unpredictable tasks. Second point here is focus on efficiency and economy. Focus is on efficiency and economy, and this focused on goal achievement and effectiveness. Goal achievement and effectiveness. DA is focusing on goal achievement and effectiveness. Again, TPA, next point, it is task oriented. Task oriented with strict conformity to rules and procedures. Task oriented with strict conformity to rules and procedure. On the other side, it will be relationship oriented with an emphasis on high performance. Also, goal orientation also you can write. Relationship orientation and goal orientation, performing or focusing on high performance. Here, the hierarchy is sharp, rigid, and the structure is authoritarian or authoritative. Rigid, authoritative, very sharp. In this side, more of flexible and adaptable structures. Flexible and adaptable structures focusing on achievement of goals, not very rules, achievement of goals or requirements of goals. So this is basically centralized and top down. This is more participative, decentralized. So the way this is more classical approach and this is more behavioral and human relations approach. And this, of course, is status quoist in nature, maintaining status quo. And this is continuous organizational improvement. Continuous organizational improvement in the name of dynamic environment, or in between a dynamic environment. Learning process. Dynamic environment, we also read this under learning process. So basically all of you wrote this under introduction and something under evolution, but these are clear cut separation that you should have. Come in handy when it comes to directly asked. Now, in the evolution, when it specifically comes to DA, there is a changing profile over time. From Cold War and the emergence of newly independent countries, from Cold War and the emergence of newly independent countries, what happened was the president of US at that time, Harry Truman talks something about the West and the rest dichotomy. Keep writing these down. West and the rest dichotomy. West and the rest dichotomy, which showed the West as developed, educated, and scientific, and the rest as underdeveloped, uneducated, and very barbaric in nature. This was a dichotomy that was created in 1960s onwards. This was after World War II, these things were happening. The United Nations declared 1960s, the UN declared 1960s as the first developmental decade. As the first developmental decade. So this is how changes in development administration were happening at that time. And this development administration in this era was defined as modernization theory. As modernization theory. So this is the actual parts of how changes will happen. In evolution, you know the broad, under evolution we wrote the broad ideas, but this is how actual change are happening. Okay, we are delving into it. So, right, it was in this era, DA was state led and a controlled economy approach. State led and a controlled economy approach that emphasized technicism, rationalism, urbanization, and the adoption of Weberian administrative system. and the adoption of Weberian administrative system. Yesterday, under Lucian Pai, we studied, and also under Hamza Alavi's ideas in CPA, we studied that these developing countries had Western, or Weberian administrative structures, but they were just structurally Weberian. The functionality was very prismatic in nature. They portrayed something called polycommunalism, polynormativism. Okay, so this was the approach of that time. In 1970s, this was the decade of critique and dependency. A decade of critique and dependency. The International Labour Organization, ILO, the International Labour Organization, found that despite the efforts of 1960s, in 1960s, the global south in 1960s, in global south, the poverty has increased rather than going down. Poverty has increased. The Western wisdom was questioned for the first time. The Western wisdom was questioned for the first time. Dependency theorists such as Raoul, A.G. Frank, these are the dependency theorists of this era. This was a radical critique, which will also be known as, this was a radical critique of DA of that time, and this will also be known as a master puppet theory or the core periphery theory. Core periphery theory. Now understand this first, and then I'll make you write. See, or first write it down. Then I'll explain to you. Right? These people like Frank, Raoul Prebisch, A.G. Frank, they argued that the global economic system is structured. To keep the South dependent on the North. Keep the South dependent on the North. Basically, South would act as a periphery, North will act as a core. North will act as a core. Basically, all of them are dependent on North. Assistance programs were seen as new forms of imperialism. Assistance programs were seen as new forms of imperialism or new imperial ideas, new imperialism. They said, Frank and people like Raoul Plebisch, they say that in order for South to develop, they have to completely cut ties from the North. It means you completely de-link your economy, society, everything from the North. Basically, this is talking about the global South and the global North. In case any of you are confused, global North means the Western countries, means the West. developed countries such as USA, UK, basically Western Europe, etc., etc. Global South is the rest of the countries. Global South, rest of the countries such as mm, the Global South includes India, countries in Africa, Southeast Asia, etc., etc. Okay? This means what? This means West wanted free trade, so the US, everything they wanted free trade. Okay? Countries such as India and Asia and Africa, everything, they complied to this free trade. So multinational companies from US, from Western Europe, they started investing in India, started investing in different countries, and they wanted free competition. They wanted free market. So that because these companies were so mature, so powerful, they used to have heavy influence uh, on different countries of the global south. Basically, they made the economy of global south dependent on the grants and on the companies of global north. This led to what? This led to something called, they were dependents and these were the masters. They were the puppet and this was the master puppet theory. Basically, whatever the master says, the puppet follows. The present Trump administration's stress for India to bend the knee, to agree to the agricultural or whatever demands they are making in terms of trade deal, it shows that attitude of master puppet, that whatever we say, you have to comply or we will increase tariffs, put on sanctions, etc. etc. Basically, for them, for global north, everything is periphery, they are at the center of it. You might have heard that quote of S. Jaishankar when the Ukraine war started, and uh, Jaishankar, when the Ukraine uh, war started, and Europe and the West wanted India to stop buying Russian oil. So Jaishankar said, it's a quote that Europe needs to get out of the mindset that Europe's problem are world's problem, Europe's problem are world's problem, but world's problems are not Europe's problem. For example, this is an attitude, that core periphery attitude, that anything that happens to us actually matters, and anything that happens elsewhere does not matter to us. That is not our problem. So he means by that is, if India or Indian society or the Indian economy is suffering because of high oil prices, we won't be able to feed our own population. But Europe does not care. Only what they care is Russia has sent waves of attack to Ukraine, and they do not care about the Indian economy. That is why Jaishankar said this quote, that Europe needs to get out of that mindset, that world's problems are not Europe's problem, but Europe's problems are world problems. That is why they do not care whether war is going on in West Asia, war is going on in Africa. There are people suffering from malnutrition, hunger, agrarian crisis is going on, diseases are spreading. So this is the attitude of the North or the global North, and that is why these dependency theorists are going ahead and targeting them and saying that whatever economic system that you all have created, this particular economic system is not very sustainable in nature, and it only serves the purpose of the West and the global North. So another example of this would be, even during COVID. So these dependency theorists are writing in 1970s and 80s. These people are writing. So uh, you must have seen during COVID, lot of Western countries hoarded vaccines for themselves, but they did not give vaccines or send vaccines uh, to African countries or other poor countries in Southeast Asia, West Asia, etc., etc. So when they completed their own vaccination within the country, and whenever they had extra, then only they started giving out and selling these vaccines to the poor countries. This means what? This approach is they do not care actually what is happening or what these underdeveloped or global south is going on, global south is facing. What they only care about is their own interest. That is the master puppet or the core periphery. I believe you understand it now. Now, are you all able to understand till now? Any questions online? ठीक है. Now, to this attitude or to this orientation of dependency theorist, the West responded vigorously. West responded vigorously. They said the West's response was a defiant response West gave. They said South has the problem. South is the problem. Understand this and write this down. South has the problem. South is the problem. South has the problem. South is the problem. North has the solution. North has the solution. North is the solution. This was a defiant response of the West to these dependency theorists. That all the problem that exists, it exists in the South. So you should not blame us for your problems. South has the problem, and the reason for this problem is South itself. That your society, your economy, your culture is that way, that you are underdeveloped and poor. South is the problem. Solution to this lies with the North. Solution to this lies with the West, the North, the global North. And what is the solution? North is the solution, or whatever the North is saying, whatever the North is following, whatever the North's approach is, that is the solution. This was the defiant response of West to these dependency theorists. They emphasized the need for, write this down, the West responded defiantly with this, and they emphasized the need for capacity building in the faulty and weak administrative system of developing countries. Focused on capacity building in the weak administrative systems of developing countries. Okay. So this was till 1970s. After 19 from tomorrow, in tomorrow's class we'll do from 1980s. We'll see. All of you understood? Pavan, Moiz, Ojaswi? Okay. Let's end it then. See you tomorrow.